on your computer, which was already logged in.
Gotcha. Okay.
Let me see about.
Brandon, which Brandon are you? I thought we
You're
had
not
three
live yet.
on the promotion and hiring list last week.
Hey, we got a game. Let's get rolling, dudes.
Tell them.
All right, we'll go.
Dennis, we're live.
All right. Brandon, which Brandon are you? I thought we had three on the promotion and hiring list last week.
Hey, we got a game. Let's get rolling, dudes.
All right, we'll go.
Dennis, we're live.
Are you playing, Jim?
Yeah, man. I got some big bets. I'm betting Ohio
Little
State,
Blake.
man.
Did you see
Dennis,
that?
we don't hear you. Dennis, we don't hear you.
Are you playing, Jim?
Yeah, man. We got some big bets.
Mike and Jim, we're live.
Betting Ohio State.
Dennis, we don't hear you. Dennis, we don't hear you.
Are you playing, Jim?
Yeah, man.
I know. All right, I left the meeting here. Hold on.
Everyone should go to mute. Everyone should go to mute to let them talk.
Where's that gallery view? Let's see. I want to get rid of this back screen.
Everyone should go to mute. Everyone should go to mute to let them talk.
Asked Tina to email me a student invitation. Mine didn't pop up.
Who's that?
Like,
Oh, he's already on.
no, that was,
Alex could took care of him, yeah.
oh, that was a while
How
ago.
do I get rid of all this? Oh, no, thanks.
And then, not X.
Look at you, just a
This
little,
one?
we're about
This
like
one.
we're like about a 20-second delay.
Getting feedback.
Well, Paul's very happy. We're like about a 20-second delay. Look at Jim. Paul's very happy.
Testing. Can you hear us? Hear us? Yes, is it?
Okay, you guys, everybody can pick now?
And we got, what if we dial the sound down?
Hey,
We're getting
Terry,
some feedback.
anybody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, let's get started then. Good evening. Today is Monday, January 11th, 2021. Welcome to this evening's regular meeting of Oregon City Council. Let's begin tonight's meeting by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag
To the
of the
The
United States
United States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council for attendance this evening? Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council for attendance this evening?
Mr. Davish,
Here.
Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council for attendance this evening?
Mr. Horniak,
Here.
Mrs. Pollock,
Here,
Mr. Reeves,
Here.
Mr. Seaman, Mr. Davish,
Here.
Mr. Wallensack, Mr. Horniak,
Here.
Mrs. Pollock, here, Mr. Reeves,
Here.
Mr. Seaman, Davish, here, Mr. Wallensack, Mr. Zale.
Here,
Why are we double?
Just, we are getting feedback here. We're trying something new. folks.
We're addressing that now.
All right.
Thank you. Also joining us are Mayor Mike Marion, City Administrator Mr. Mike, Melissa Papour, our Law Director, Paul Roman. Who else is there? Darlene Huntermark is here with us today. Our Fire Chief Danny Hartman, Police Chief Mr. Brandon Began, and Jim Wolf, and also Rec Commissioner Tim Borton. Council, the reason why we're kind of doing a different format here today, me being in the council chambers, is next week we have a public hearing today, and we also have one in 2 weeks that we anticipate having a crowd at. So we wanted to at least have one council member here that would be able to address the citizens if they do come into council chambers to speak before council. We have nobody here, and the first order of business today would be the approval of the meeting minutes for the December 21st, 2020 regular meeting of council.
Mr. President,
Seaman?
so move for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, the meeting minutes from the December 21st, 2020 regular meeting of council are approved as submitted. Council, we do have a public hearing this evening. This public hearing is for the application of SUE 171-20 for the special use in an R2 medium density residential district for the purpose of raising chickens/ducks for the use of consumption and living on the property described as parcel number 44-70060. The applicant owners are Christina Harwick and David Blakemore. The location is 1810 James Road. I will open the public hearing at 7:10. And I'll ask Mr. Gilmore. Mr. Gilmore, can you just give us a brief overview of what this application is about?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, well, as you stated, it's for raising ducks and chickens. It's located in the South Shore Park area. It was recommended to be approved with conditions at the Plan Commission. And let's see, they wanted to revisit it in a year. The stipulation limits to a dozen ducks and hens. They want they want them to come into compliance within 90 days after approval.
Thank you, Mr. Gilmore. Council, to let you know, there is nobody here in council chambers to speak on behalf or against this SUE. I'll ask council if there's any questions on the SUE.
Mr. President?
Is that Mayor?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Mayor.
And if you see that stipulation of coming into compliance within 90 days, that is because the applicant had received some male ducks, and they were in the process of relocating them, and there was no objection at the time of any of the residents that had showed up at the meeting, and we granted them a 90 days to come into compliance, to rehome or come into compliance with the male ducks. And there's a name for them. I forgot what the males or ducks are
Gander?
called. Huh?
Is it a gander or something like that? No.
No, it was,
Drakes.
yeah. What was that?
Drake.
Yeah, that's correct. That was it.
It's named after our subdivision.
Yeah, but so that's why that 90 days for compliance was there. There were only people speaking in behalf of the applicants. There was no one there present that had any objections.
Thank you, Mayor.
The planning commission did it.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, is there any other questions on this SUE 171-20?
And Mr. President, if I may follow up.
Yes, sir, Mayor.
And we've been trying to be very consistent at how we issue these. And the other condition about showing up in a year for a final approval for a permanent SUE is something we've been doing, because if someone doesn't live up or they're causing havoc in the neighborhood, we would reject that permit at that time or sooner. And we usually make that very clear. No, we always make that very clear to the applicants. And they've been quite good so far, and we've been following up and making sure people do live up to what they say they will do.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, if there's no questions for the administration, I'll close the public hearing at 7:15. And I'll ask Ms. Evans, I'll assign item number 1 of 2021 with ordinance number 1 of 2021 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing a special use permit for parcel number 44-70060 for property located at 1810 James Road for the purpose of raising chickens, ducks for consumption and living on the property in an R2 medium density residential district.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President.
They took me off of the gallery view, so if you could say who is asking for permission to speak. Oh, there
Okay,
you
we're
go.
back.
All right, thank you. Was that Mr. Zale?
No, it was not.
It was me,
Mr.
Mr.
Horniak.
Walzak.
Mr. Horniak.
Yeah, I move for passage of ordinance number 1 of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Dabish. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 1 of 2021?
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes,
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallense.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 1 of 2021 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Council, we did not have a committee of the whole meeting, therefore we need to add items 2 through 7 of 2021 to this evening's agenda. Can I get a motion for that, please?
Mr. President,
Mr. Seaman.
so moved for 2 through 7.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, items number 2 through 7 of 2021 are added to this evening's agenda, and we will start with item number 2 of 2021, presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President and council. We crossed you up this year. This is traditionally ordinance number 1 of every year, but being we had the public hearing, it threw our whole scheme of things off. But this is the one that allows each of our departments to conduct business without having to bring every ordinance before council. And it, like I said, is traditionally ordinance number 1 of every year. This year it's ordinance number 2.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, any questions on item number 2?
Mr. President,
Mr. Zale?
would I be correct if I said with that limit that we've done is about $10,000?
25.
Is 25?
Yes.
This authorizes, and we have adopted a procurement policy. Our limits are still the same. Oh, Mr. President, sorry. I'm looking right at Tim, talking to him. It's a different. We have the same policy. Ours is consistent with state law and our charter, and the council set that rate, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago now. We haven't changed it since then. This ordinance simply authorizes the departments to conduct and do bids and follow the policy.
Okay, so they could make a large purchase of $25,000 without our approval.
That's up to $25,000.
Up to 25,000.
Has to be budgeted and appropriated, et cetera. So it's not any different than for the last 4 years.
Okay, so that's part of my question. It's going to be an item or items that did come before us in budget hearings. So
That's correct.
It's because I'm sorry, just frankly, I've seen some surprise purchases made in the past that were quite expensive that never even came before us, and they weren't in the budget.
Yeah, up to $25,000, the department administration has authority to act. We have to make sure there's money in a budget for it. There are some times, I'm trying to think, there's ways that,
Emergency repairs.
Yeah, emergency repairs and that sort of thing, but.
Oh, yeah, I get that. But I mean, there's been some things there's been some items that have been purchased though, that have raised some eyebrows.
Okay.
That we knew nothing about, and it wasn't in the budget.
Now,
Okay.
I believe, Mr. Zale, that they are required to get multiple bids if possible, to make
Oh, yeah.
sure that they are getting what they are asking for at the lowest price possible.
Right. Okay.
Mr. President.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor.
And I understand Mr. Thiel's question or the comment he was making, And even though they are required to give bids, I know what his concern would be, well, that's irrelevant if he didn't think the purchase should be made in the first place.
That's exactly right.
And so there may have been some occasion, we try to inform, I think you'll find that happen very few times. We're very careful not to let.
Mr. President, Mr. President,
Mr. Seaman.
yes.
Well, I guess that's what I was saying, that we try to make sure that doesn't happen. And if we are going to do it, and it's a large purchase, by all means, we try to notify you that what's going on.
Mayor, Mr. Beasley.
Mr.
Jim, I'll come
President?
right to you then, Jim. Are department heads required to run that through your office, Mayor, Mr. Beasley's office before they
Yes.
make that purchase?
Absolutely. It's my job to, now I will this, it doesn't mean I'll be right all the time, but if something comes to my, if any purchase of almost any size, everything over $1,000 goes to the mayor's desk. Anything over like $100, I think, comes to mine. Well, let's give an example of one that Tim, I had a department head or the deputy call me today and say, boy, they're worried, they've got, maybe they're looking for an ultraviolet light to help prevent COVID for a department. They didn't budget anything for it. They budgeted, but there is a budget item for supplies. It's about $4,000. They could go out and buy that. Now, not without the mayor's approval and my approval, but council never approved that $4,000 item. I might think, we didn't say yes yet, but we're having a conversation about it. So Tim's ultimately right that we have to do our job and balance and catch the things that we think are noticeable or attention getting. Anything over $25,000 needs an ordinance, but there is discretion and ways to spend money up to $25,000. That's our job to catch those. If you see something that you think looks unusual or aware of, let us know that we should have touched base with you on it. If it's mundane, we do a lot of routine stuff, that buying stuff, there's a general supply line item in their budget. They don't, but if there's something that's out of the ordinary, we want people to have a heads up. We don't like to surprise people. So make sure you let us know when you see something and say, hey, Mike, we should have had a heads up on that. And I think it'd be better for all of us. That's all that'd be my ask if you're aware of those, and we'll try and make sure we're as right as we can be on them. All right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Beasley. Mr. Seaman.
Yes, well, they're not really called bids, they're quotes. They can be phone quotes, or they can be turned in written sometimes, but they're not really what you call a bid. They're quotes when they're smaller amounts.
Sure.
Number
That's
two, what about personal contracts, Mr. Beasley? In the limit on personal contracts versus supplies?
I don't know of any difference. We don't have a lot of personal contracts in Oregon.
Well, I know occasionally, yeah.
We don't do any contract.
Gay
comes through-
Gindi has a personal contract, right?
Who does?
What's her name? Gay Gindi for license plates? She used to check to see on license plates what money should be coming back to Oregon.
I
And she'd
don't
have a
know.
personal well, anyway, we have a few personal contracts.
Not all contracts went with an ordinance.
Go through council. All the contracts go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if they're even if they're 7,000 or 12,000, yeah.
That's right.
Okay, that's the difference. Okay, that's all. Just so everybody knows, personal contracts are a little bit different.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Well, all contracts.
Thank you.
Council, is there any further questions on item number 2? Hearing no questions, I'll sign item number 2 with ordinance number 2 of 2021 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Authorizing the city administrator, director of public service, chief of police, fire chief, commissioner of parks and recreation, commissioner of building and zoning inspection, finance director, and other municipal administrators, subject to the written authorization of the mayor, to take bids on equipment, materials, supplies, maintenance agreements, and insurance from time to time without the requirements for further legislation to be adopted by city council and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Seaman.
I move for passage of ordinance number 2 as an emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 2, 2021 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Powell,
yes,
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes.
Mr. Zale.
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 2 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. We'll move to item number 3. Item number 3 is presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian. Mayor.
And as much as the last ordinance was usually ordinance number 1 of every year, this is usually ordinance number 2. The city recognizing Spring Fest through the Oregon Growth Corporation. Once again, I think everybody's aware of that.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, is there any questions on item number 3? Here are no questions. I will sign item number 3 with resolution number 3 of 2021 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
Resolution recognizing Oregon Spring Fest as a community-sponsored event authorized by the Oregon Growth Corporation.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I'd like passage of, it's not resolution, correct? Number 3 of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Seaman. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of resolution number 3 of 2021?
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes,
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that resolution number 3 of 2021 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Item number 4 being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian. Mayor.
And this is on the seasonal pay scale. Mr. Horton is here from the Recreation Department to explain what his desire is. And so, Mr. President, go to Mr. Horton.
Can I just do one note first?
Mr. Beasley.
Just as a note overall for the members, this is an adjustment we make most years when there's a change in the Ohio minimum wage, and that's what triggers it. There's a couple of little tweaks within it because of some changes in responsibility, but overall it's driven by the state's minimum wage numbers as they go forward, just to give everyone a heads up. That's what pushes us toward that. That's all I had to say on it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Borton?
Sorry, hitting the wrong buttons. Yeah, we have to do this every year as they adjust the minimum wage. It kind of pushes all our seasonals. We did try this year. Jeanette worked really hard to try and make the classifications and the steps make a little more sense, because in the past there was a lot of really weird math going on in the grid format. So we tried to clean that all up to make it consistent across the board from the classifications. And really, as all of you can, I'm sure, figure out, as soon as minimum wage goes up, that's where we hire our brand new seasonals in at. So it doesn't make sense to have our last year's seasonals making less than the new year's seasonal or the same amount of seasonals. As we go up the pay scale, the people at the end of our pay scale are more of our supervisors. They're responsible for staff. And the highest level, of course, that's our concession supervisor and facility maintenance supervisor, where they're actually scheduling people, calling people in, dealing with money, dealing with conflict resolutions, those kind of things. So we need to pay them a little bit more so we can stay competitive with the rest of the market and keep good employees here as seasonal employees.
Thank you, Mr. Borton. Council, is there any questions on item number 4? Hearing no questions, I'll sign item number 4 with ordinance number 4 of 2021 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans.
amending ordinance number 3 of 2020 by establishing a revised pay classification schedule for seasonal employees and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move for passage of ordinance number 4 of 2020 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Horniak. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 4 of 2021 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mrs. Powell,
yes,
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 4 of 2021 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. We'll move to item number 5. Item number 5 is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and Public Service Director, Mr. Paul Roman. Mayor, Mr. Roman.
Start, and we'll go then to Mr. Roman and change order, say number 2 with the water line, something of the magnitude of this project. This is probably you could, it's not unusual to see change orders. And since the nature of the work, probably fewer than what Mr. Roman would have probably figured were possible for this job. So I'd go to him and he could expand on that.
Roman.
Yeah, Mr. President, thank you, Mayor. Well, this change order is the final change order. It's in it, and it's needed to close out the project. But the bulk of this cost really was to make a repair on the trunk line. We have a 16-inch trunk line that's on Navarre. Part of our work when we were doing the local line, we discovered that there was a leak just off of the trunk line. And when we discovered it, since we were already mobilized with Spear Brothers, we took this on. We actually had to replace 2 trunk line valves, which is very expensive. But we did it as part of this project just to get it done. And so it's something that's not planned, but it's wise to do it at the time that you're there. And the leak was ongoing. It was actually going to a storm sewer this whole time. You wouldn't have known otherwise, but when we did the work, that's when we discovered it. And those details are listed in the attached memo, and a breakdown of the costs are included. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions. We did have the money budgeted in this year's budget to pay this as well. So,
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Councilor Drake. Yes, Ms. Powell.
Mr. Roman, was that the repair that was done over on Navarre by the overpass close to Stadium?
no, this was over in the Matthews Ford area.
Oh,
Our work, the Navarre project was not near the stadium area. It was strictly in that block between Lollendorf and Isaac Streets Drive.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Roman, you said it was going towards the sewer. Was it going towards the storm or sanitary sewer?
It was actually, well, there's a storm sewer right underneath where the leak was. So it was just draining to the storm sewer. You wouldn't have known otherwise. But once we were in the area, and we hired Aqualine just to inspect our entire system every year, looking for leaks. And this is a leak that they had discovered. And once we did more work, we realized it was leaking to the storm sewer this whole time. But it's a big repair. I mean, I hate to even get involved with the trunk line in the middle of winter, but it's something you just couldn't let go. And we just decided to do it as part of this project. So
A lot of I there.
yeah, well, not in the storm. But
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, is there any further questions on item number 5? Hearing no questions, I'll sign item number 5 with ordinance number 5 of 2021 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing the mayor, director of public service, and finance director to sign change order number 2 final with Spear Brothers Incorporated, 3812 Old Railroad Street, Sandusky, Ohio, in an amount of a net contract addition of $188,621.83 due to additional work related to the Navarre Avenue water line replacement phase 1 project and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Paula.
I move for passage of ordinance number 5 of 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Paula.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 5 of 2021 as an emergency measure?
Mrs. Pavlov,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenseck,
Yes.
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 5 of 2021 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Move to item number 6. Item number 6 is being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and our police chief, Mr. Brandon Began. Mayor, Mr. Began, Chief Began.
Well, Mr. President, I'll start and go to Chief Began. And, we're trying to stay updated with our cameras, our body cams and whatnot through the police department. This is one of the ordinances that help keep us up to date. And we'll go to Chief Began.
Chief Began.
Yes, Mr. President. So this is for, it's a company called WatchGuard. It's actually a arm of Motorola. So they are a established business in body cams. Currently, we have the Co-band system for both our body cameras and our vehicle cameras. Our body cameras we're losing about one a week to failure, mostly with battery issues, but they're nearing the end of their usefulness. And we're down to only 3 spares that we can rotate in and out. So this is to replace the body worn cameras for everybody at the police department. One of the bad things about Coban, and the technology has been updating over the years, but one of the bad things about Coban is the battery is inside of the camera. And with the new WatchGuard, they're interchangeable batteries. So we could actually, change out the battery. This is to buy docking stations for the vehicles. If we have officers that are out there working more than an 8-hour shift, their cameras are starting to die out and they have to charge at the police department for a period of time. So with the charging stations or charging docks in the car, we can actually have an extra battery that we can slide in and out. So that way we don't have anybody who is without a camera at any point, which is really important. And in addition to the body worn cameras, this is for 2 interview room cameras. So over the last couple of years, we've been updating the interview room for the detectives. We have a one single room that we were using before for multiple different purposes, including interviews. And now we, over the last couple of years, we've started to build and change out a room in the Detective Bureau that's specifically for interviews. This is to buy 2 camera systems for that as well. And those are actually the same camera systems that'll be used in vehicles, but they have a mount that would go for the evidence room. And then all the technical help with everything comes with warranties. Sergeant Druckenmiller does really good with our technology stuff, and he's really knows a lot more about it than anybody at the police department. And he chose this company because he believes they'll be better than Coban.
Thank you, Chief Began. Council, is there any questions for the administration for item number 6 of 2021? Hearing no questions, I will sign item number 6 with ordinance number 6 of 2021 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing the mayor and finance director to issue purchase orders to Motorola Solutions Incorporated, 1301 East Algonquin Road, Schaumburg, Illinois, over a 5-year period at an estimated cost of $34,871.80 per year for the purchase of WatchGuard body cameras, an interview room camera system, warranties and software and licensing to be used in the Oregon Police Division and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Zale.
I move for passage of ordinance 6 of 2021 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Zale.
Second,
Second by Ms. Paula. Ms. Evans, would you please take a roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 6 of 2021 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mrs. Pollock,
yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenbeck,
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance number 6 of 2021 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. Move to the last item this evening, item number 7, being presented by Mayor Michael J. Safarian and City Administrator, Mr. Michael Beasley. Mayor, Mr. Beasley?
We'll go right to Mr. Beasley.
Yeah, Mr. President and members, as you know, for some time, we've been working with our fire command and with the council and with our part-time firefighters association to really kind of fundamentally change the way we operate our department. A big part of that change includes a new fire station that the council is aware of that we're moving forward on, but also changes in our collective bargaining focus. This is the first step, and I want to make sure we don't step on our other negotiations. We're also negotiating with a full-time fire unit at the same time, but it was important to get this one wrapped up and be ready to move forward on the next one. This contract change does several important things. I think the chiefs are on and they might join in or be able to answer questions too. The most important thing that it does is that it is the most important step from changing us from a primarily tone out based response for emergencies to a scheduled firefighters response to emergencies for both fires and ambulance runs. So that historically, and it's a big change for Oregon, and we've talked about this for a long time, we're the community that held on to our traditional system longer than anyone else. I think as far as we know, we're the largest community in Ohio, our size, that held on to that traditional system. And we did it as long as we could. We found, and I think we all concluded, council, administration, mayor, the fire command, and the Part-Time Firefighters Association, that we needed together to have a different system. This new approach will have, we will still use scheduled firefighters, but tone out will not be an important part of our response. It'll still be there and necessary on occasion for fires or industrial fires or situations. It'll still be part of our response, but it'll not be the normal everyday approach to what we do. Our normal everyday approach will be, we're looking, as we talked during our budget time, and we've talked over the months, actually years, we're going to be increasing our number of full-time firefighters. We're going to be creating some supervisors within that full-time unit. We're wrapping up that bargaining process now. We are going to be creating a new basic life support component to the full-time unit. And then we're going to have, and those will be BLS responders who will be part of our full-time unit, who will be part of Oregon's response. In addition to that, we'll have our traditional, what was historically called the ECHO unit. At the end of the day, we might start to relabel all these things as we get into our new system, but what have we traditionally called our ECHO unit? For us, I think it's an important step we've all looked toward. And this collective bargaining agreement, it took us a while to get through it, but it achieves those objectives going forward. And I'm excited for the work that the chiefs have done. They really worked hard at getting this done, and the association worked hard at getting this done. Council has been involved and engaged in it over the years as well, but it's an important step for our community. And it's nice to have achieved it through consensus and at the bargaining table rather than another type of conflict resolution. So I think it's a good statement for Oregon and for the department. And I don't know if the chiefs want to join in on something before we go forward, but it's exciting for all of us to turn that corner together. It's an important step. Chiefs, you have something? Or Dennis, want to talk to Chief?
Chief Hartman, do you have anything?
Yes, I just add to what Mike Beasley said. It is a long time coming. It is needed. I just want to give one, like, for example, one example. Station number 42 had 1,880 runs last year. That runs into 6 a day, and that's just too much for volunteers. It's just too much to ask. We've seen a steady decline in response, but when you start adding up those kind of figures, it is time to make a change. And so as Mike said, the union understood that. But change is difficult, and big change is really difficult. And the tradition is strong here. The pride in the department is strong. And we're going to do our very best to continue that tradition and continue to have everybody be involved, but just on a new path. And we're really excited to get this done and get working on our new on our new system.
Thank you, Chief Hartman. Chief Wolf, Chief Mullins, you guys have anything to add? Council, do you have any questions for the administration on item number 7? Hear no questions, I'll assign item number 7 with ordinance number 7 of 2020 and ask Ms. Evans to read it into the record. Ms. Evans?
Authorizing the mayor, city administrator, and finance director to enter into a contract with the Oregon Part-Time Firefighters Association and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Council?
Mr. President,
Mr. Zale.
I move for passage of ordinance 7, 2021 as an emergency measure.
Thank you, Mr. Zale.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Paula. Ms. Evans, would you please take roll call of council on passage of ordinance number 7 of 2021 as an emergency measure?
Mr. Zale,
Yes.
Mrs. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Davish,
Yes.
Mr. Horniak,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Mr. Wallenstein.
Yes. Thank you, council. Please note that ordinance 7 of 2021 did pass by a vote of 7 yeas, 0 nays. That ends the items for consideration and passage this evening, and we will go to the mayor's report. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. And council, you have correspondence from, for some appointments that I have here, but then I also have one retirement. I'm going to start with the retirement and ask council's concurrence in the acceptance of the retirement resignation of Mr. John Lighty, who's out at the wastewater treatment plant, as he's notified us that March 1st, 2021 will be his last retirement day, although his last working day will be February 28th. I would ask council's concurrence in the acceptances of John Lighty's desires to retire once again, March 1st, 2021.
Thank you, Mayor. Council?
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Paula.
I move to concur with the mayor on accepting the retirement of John Lighty from the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you, Ms. Paula.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, Mayor, council concurs with the acceptance of the retirement resignation of John Lighty from the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I believe John was our longest serving employee in the city. So that's a heck of accomplishment. The next on these boards and commissions, which are the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Civil Service Commission, and all of these are current position holders. And so they are renewals of their terms that they are currently serving. And I will start with the Board of Zoning Appeals and list 4 of them. And they're all terms that go from January 1st of 2021 through December 31st of 2023. They are Dave Andrus, 6160 Corduroy Road, Dave Golis, 5505 Pickle Road, Bill Reed, 4353 Pickle Road, and Ron Vukovich, 244 North Stadium Road. Once again, and I've asked council's concurrence on the reappointment of these 4 individuals, January 1st, 2021 through 12/31/23.
Thank you, Mayor. Council?
Mr. President,
Mr. Seaman?
I move to concur with the mayor's reappointments.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Horniak. Council, or any objections? Hearing no objections, Mayor, council concurs with the reappointments of the members of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you, council. And next, the Civil Service Commission. And these positions in the Civil Service Commission are they really do a lot. And when the individuals work together, I guess, smoothly, which they do, it really makes that board function very well. Joe Byers had filled an unexpired term of the past, and he worked in quite well with the other 2 members and Sandy Garbrick, who run the Civil Service Commission. And therefore, I would ask council's concurrence in the reappointment of Joe Byers with the term from January 1st, 2021 through December 31st of 2026. And Joe Byers does live at 5629 Eagles Landing Drive. And let's get that ask council's concurrence in the reappointment of Joe Byers.
Thank you, Mayor. Council?
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move to concur with the mayor's appointment of Joe Byers.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, Mayor, council concurs with the reappointment of Joe Byers to the Civil Service Commission.
And with those appointments and retirements, that does conclude my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Beasley?
Just a quick note to say thank you to the members for your focus over the years on our gradual transition of our fire department. It's something that's been important to all of us. It took the energy and focus of the firefighters, command, the administration, the mayor, and the council to help get us turned into a space that I think will be better ultimately for all of us, especially though for our residents in need moving forward. So I'm excited about it. Just the other notes, as the world is going to be starting to emerge from COVID, we are focusing again on looking at our town center. We're moving forward on the engineering side. We do have some strong interests from the world of folks who want to build things. That world's a little bit up in the air still, as restaurateurs and retailers are trying to figure out their new timing, and some are dealing with some cash challenges. But there's interest out there, and we're in a lot of conversations. We'll continue to work with the council president and Steve Horniak, economic development chair, on things going forward, and we'll brief the council as we have things that emerge. Finally, on COVID, we failed to get the governor to change his priorities to include our police officers and the other first responders eligible for vaccines in the first blush or B. We don't understand why. I mean, I based it on some metrics that I understand, but I still wish that we would have done it. So often our police officers are the first on the scene of out to help people. It's just what it is. We are continuing though to work on initiatives waiting for the vaccines. Our departments are looking to get on regular schedules within a couple of weeks by the end of the month. So we're still having some hits. We've got people off in several departments right now, and we're all tiptoeing around the hallways because we've got friends that have it and are starting with symptoms in some of our departments still. So just be very mindful of that going out there and take care of yourselves so we don't spread things. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. Ms. Purpura?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Purpura. Mr. Roman?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. And Mr. Reeves?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Zale?
No report from my standing committee, but I just want to echo what Mr. Beasley just said. I think it is a shame that we did bypass police officers first on these vaccinations, because yes, they are on the scene quite often before anybody else is, and they're hands-on all day long. And if they are, and if you notice the recent fire that the 3 deputies were involved in, they were the first ones there.
Sure.
It's just the way it is because they're out there already. But I don't know why they couldn't make him understand, but we'll get through it.
We gave it our best shot.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Zale. Mr. Seaman?
Yes, I have a question. Me and Mrs. Evans were discussing the sunset on the council wage that we passed the last time. I just want to make sure that it continues as it is now. And if we need to take any action as council, I'm not sure if there was a sunset on that or not. Maybe Mr. Beasley or Miss Evans can fill us in on that a little bit more.
Mr. President, members, it is my recollection that there was a sunset that would require action. We will dig it out. We have this month to act, but I'll double check whether it's true. I think it's actually 2 years from now is the sunset, is my recollection, but I will double check that. We'll get a memo out. I think it is 2 years from right now that there is a sunset provision that is out there. That's my recollection, but we'll double check.
Let's check it out. And if we need legislation to renew it, let's bring it in next meeting. Okay.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman. Mr. Davish?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Davish. Ms. Paula?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Paula. Mr. Horniak?
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak, and I have no report from my standing committee, so therefore I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Second.
Second by Mr. Reeves. Any objections? Hearing no objections, the